Hi, everyone. Hello, attendees. Hello, my fellow panelists. My name is Jill Doble. Welcome to the first session of the 2024 Hal Leonard Spring Webinar Series. I am the Sheet Music Plus Music Education Marketing Specialist, and Sheet Music Plus is the official sponsor this year of this webinar series. We're so happy to bring you all these sessions in cooperation with Hal Leonard. Both of our brands support music education. We're so happy to be able to put on events like these, not only to provide resources, but also to connect people with other educators and do what we can to make your life easier. So to kick it off, we're going to do a quick giveaway for all you early birds who are here on time. This is for a $100 Sheet Music Plus gift card. Before we do that, everyone in attendance today, everyone who's here, will get a 10% off coupon for Sheet Music Plus. So be watching your email in the following week for that. So let's get going with our gift card giveaway here. Hopefully everyone can see that. And our first winner is, no, we don't want Aaron Stabell. Can we respin it?
Jill, go ahead and do it, and we can work on that. Okay.
That's one of our panelists' spouse for everyone in the audience. Okay, Kim Kaiser, congratulations. You won a $100 gift card to Sheet Music Plus. We will be sending that via email as well. So keep an eye out. If you don't see it in a week or so, double check your spam inbox. And let's get going. So as I said, my name's Jill. We're going to do a couple more giveaways as we go, so stick around. And I want to introduce my esteemed colleagues here. We're here with Sarah Stabell and Tanya Champanapankit, and we had some conversations earlier this week, and they're absolutely fantastic. I think we're going to have a great session today. So in order to get started, I want to ask the both of you, and before we get going, if you have any questions as we go, attendees, you can drop them in the Q&A over on the right-hand side of your screen. And hopefully we can get to those before the end of our session today. So Tanya and Sarah, please do a little introduction. Tell me what you're teaching and how long you've been at it, and kind of where your passion for building relationships comes from and building community. Tanya, would you kick us off?
Sure. Hi, everybody. I'm so excited to be here today. Currently, I teach at Nyack High School in the outskirts of New York City, and I've been there for 6 years. I've taught in New York as well as Texas, and I'm currently the music director of the New York Youth Symphony Crescendo Orchestra, as well as a conductor at the Manhattan School of Music pre-college. So I bring a little experience in the youth orchestra realm as well. And for me, the idea of community really comes from the idea of the individual student feeling like they belong to something that's, greater than themselves. And, I work really hard, and I think a lot about how to build, and empower individual voices so that they feel like they have, a collective effort going towards, a goal together. So, that's just a little bit of a, flavor on that. I'm going to pass it off to Sarah.
Thanks, Tanya. Well, hi, everybody. I'm also super happy to be chatting with you all. I wish we could see you all, but I'm glad to be together. My name is Sarah. I'm she, her pronouns. I live and work outside of Rochester, New York, so upstate New York. My background, I'm a singer, and both of my degrees are from the Eastman School of Music here in Rochester. And I teach secondary choir. So I teach in a public school outside of the city of Rochester. I have 9 choirs in my program here at school. And outside of school, I also specialize in musical theater, early childhood through professional. And I'm a director in an organization called Artists Unlimited that I'm super proud of, where we offer opportunities to perform in choral, dance, and musical theater settings for individuals with disabilities. So I think my passion for community building really comes from the idea that there is a path to success for every person in what we do, and that a good leader in those situations finds ways to make sure that every person feels valued, feels welcome, feels and knows that they are contributing to something. Tanya, I love the way you said something bigger than ourselves. And I'm guessing that everybody on this call today probably has similar ideas. Otherwise, you wouldn't be an educator and you wouldn't be spending this afternoon together. So that's kind of my baseline, and also kind of the baseline that I'm excited to kind of bounce around with all of you this afternoon.
Thanks, Sarah.
What about you, Jill? Tell us your background.
Yeah, so before I was at Sheet Music Plus, I was a band director for 17 years, and I have spent my whole life in Iowa in the Midwestern United States. I have a degree from University of Northern Iowa, and I have taught at every level from fifth grade up through high school band at one time or another. I'm a middle school specialist though, and my passion for building community kind of dawned on me one day, years and years ago, when I realized that nearly every person that's important to me came to me through music or art, like to a fault. And I realized, oh my goodness, like what we do really builds connections, because I have connections to people from 20 years ago in my life because I met them through something that I did in music. And I just realized that it's a powerful way to build connections between people, barring cultures, barring location, barring anything else. It's a grand way to meet people and to build connections. So that's what I really love about teaching music, is that you can help students build those connections for themselves. And so, yeah, what I want to kind of kick us off with here on our discussion is, I'm sure we all have kind of a different definition of what community means. So I'd love to hear kind of what does that mean to you when we talk about a community, and what comes to your mind? Like for me, when I'm thinking about building community in my classroom, in my ensemble, I think of my motto, which is honest but kind. And I always am thinking of the way that I'm teaching students to interact with me, how I'm teaching them to interact with each other, and how I would like to see that play out in other places that aren't my classroom. So when that comes from a place of, I'm always going to tell you the truth, but I'm always going to do it with your best interests at heart. That's how I like to see people interact in the real world. And so that's kind of my motto. And what do you guys think about that?
I love that, Jill. That's such a great way to say it. And I think the three of us share that, the idea that we want to build something that we take outside of our classroom. I think the parallel for me, again, in the choral setting, our motto is, we're doing something together that we can't do alone. And that kind of shared, what am I contributing to something that's bigger than myself? And my students can recite that motto. If they were on this Zoom today, they could say it together with me. But I think it goes back to what you said. You know, we're so lucky we have this opportunity to build something that then hopefully our kids will transfer into other places, right? So the idea that it feels really good to contribute positively to something that's not just about me. There aren't a ton of other places where I think kids can articulate having that experience, but our classrooms can be that. And it feels so great to us, but also to our students. So the way that you said that was really great. And I think that's our parallel. Like I always tell my kids, I love choir. I love it more than solo singing for myself, because it's about doing something together that we can't do alone. Yeah.
Absolutely, Sarah. And, just to add to that, I really, the idea of ensemble is, you're right. It's a place that we all have to work together, and we have to, we are a team, and we are, as strong as the newest person in the room, right? And how do we create that space for everybody so that they feel like they are part of that process and they are contributing? I love that word that you used. And for me, I think I tried to create like a microcosm of, a system that I feel like kids can thrive in, right? So that they are experiencing something that in their, in their ways of trying to learn how to learn, that they feel that they can really, really thrive, and then perhaps even feel that so much that their confidence is so, profoundly impacted, that they go through their life feeling this sense of, belonging, and their sense of, voice, right? So, I'm coming from the lens of orchestra, so I often think about that, how like, our violas are, like kind of the glue to the orchestra, and, kind of empowering that way and not making viola jokes. So, but only sometimes.
I love that, Tanya. And Jill, can I go ahead, Jill? Can we go back
Yeah,
to that?
please.
I like the way that you said the newest person in the room because, I feel like, especially as a younger teacher, I don't know the demographics of our folks that are on with us today, but there's always so much pressure about the performance. And I am sure every music educator has felt that in the general music classroom and our ensembles, right? This idea that the way that we'll be judged is our concert. And that's true probably for all of us, but something that I'm really thinking a lot about lately, and I wonder if you all are too, is the fact that there are a lot of ways to show success in our ensembles. And when you look at it from the lens of we are as strong as the newest member in our room, or trying to find a path to success for every child, we're looking for ways to show that success besides just the concert, and we can still have a great concert, but that's in line with everything that our schools are trying to do. And it also builds this sense of community where kids see that not only the best players or the best singers matter, right? Which is again something that we want to take outside the classroom, I think. That idea that we are all contributing in our own way, that everybody adds value, that there's important stuff coming from every single member of our groups. So that's a really great point, Tanya.
Yeah, I love that. So if we're thinking about what our goals are in building that community, obviously then we have to, as music directors, we always think about what's our goal, and then how do we get there. So I would love to hear everybody's kind of policies and best practices that they maybe put in place on day one of their classroom to set the expectation for the kind of community that they want to build. What are some things that you talk about with your kids, maybe at the beginning of the school year, or the things that you're modeling for them that help build that community?
Sarah, why don't you go first?
Oh, thanks. Well, I mean, I think from day one, what you said, Jill, is that's the baseline in my mind, is modeling exactly what you're hoping that the kids will take and run with. So some kind of mantra type things in my classroom, kind of going back to what we said before about this is something we're doing that's a cumulative effort from everybody. But I especially, I don't want to, going back to your viola comment, I don't want to make any singer jokes, but something that I think really helps kids is the idea that, I'll speak for singers, that you can approach singing in two ways. And this is true for any performer, right? The way that's really about me as the performer, or the more outward focus, that's giving life to a composer's ideas, giving life to a character in our case, giving life to a story, and also creating connections with our audience. And so I guess if I were going to sum it up in one baseline, maybe that outward focus of our purpose helps, because we're creating connections with our audience and with everybody that's coming to see our performances, but also that shared goal matters. The idea that we're here to do this job together, you kind of can't help but become connected to the people that you're doing that kind of task with. So if I had to sum it up into one, I think that might be it. But I'd love, after we kind of hear from you, Tanya, I'd love to talk more about like kind of some specific ways that we can do that in individual activities and that kind of stuff. What would your baseline be, Tanya?
Sorry, before Tanya talks, I wanted to hop onto that idea of selflessness in the ensemble and giving life to that greater cause. I think it's I think it's really academically related too. When we talk about things like balance and blend in our ensembles, giving up that sense of self for the sense of that community is so important, and it's a really great thing to lead with. So thanks for that, Sarah. Sorry to interrupt you, Tanya. Let's hear what you got to say.
No, I think we're ready. We're ready to get to the nitty gritty, and I'm excited to. One of the things that I think a lot about is, especially in high school, right? We have the kids for 4 years, right? And that's a large percentage of their lifetime. If we really think about it that way, that's a really large percent. Now, sometimes as they grow, we can only push the level of the ensemble, rather, I'm going to say orchestra, but the ensemble so far each year, right? But for me, I'm always thinking, like, in the child development sense, how do we put in their hands the sense of, that they are contributing, that they are committed and dedicated to this, and how do their voice matter in the big scheme of the ensemble. So one example that I do, first day, like, of course there are setting the expectations, but part of that expectation really isn't from me all the time. I don't think that, like, as one person, I don't think it's fair that I'm the one that, controls everything. So I really rely on the upperclassmen or the people that have been in the ensemble to really be the voice that leads the other kids. So just to give an example is that, like, the first day I kind of like make sure that we have like a senior talk, and we talk about, like, oh, what does leadership look like? How does it feel? What is your vision for this ensemble within your year? What do you want to accomplish? So that might be something as much as, like, I want to make sure that this, this little freshman cellist that I have known for a really long time, sticks with it until the second year. That can be a goal, right? And I think that's so crucial. And that's, just one thing that they will feel really empowered if that they are, taking part in that success of somebody else and the ensemble. Another thing that, I really, it's a little risky to say, but I have student conductors. Usually at the concert, I will have students, like, who have, our seniors have rehearsed the orchestra a little bit, and they do the show. They run the show. They make the speeches. They conduct, and I will play whatever instrument that they were playing. But I think that sense of ownership really is key. If you want to really build your community in your ensemble, it can't just be your singular vision. I think it has to come from a collective whole. And part of that is, it was really risky trying it, but I really have felt that it has, oh my gosh, there's a dog. Okay, I'm very excited. That collective vision isn't just from me, and that it's really from the kids. And I think that's the heartbeat of it. It's really part, those voices matter. Jill, I would love to hear, like, your ideas on that.
Yeah, I love what you said about having older students take younger ones under their wing, because for me, a big piece of this is not only accountability for yourself, but accountability for each other. And so in the beginning of the year, when I'm talking to my kids, I speak a lot about making mistakes, because we're in a learning environment and we're all going to make them, myself included. And so I always say, if I make a mistake, I am going to own it. You are allowed to roast me for it. And then when I do make a mistake, I say, that's my bad. I take it. I'll try that again. I'm going to do better next time. And then I expect them to call me on it. And that way, when the students are on their own, they're making mistakes, I give them permission to say, that's me. Yep. Oops, my bad. And so I encourage a culture of, in the room, if I ask someone to play something, or even a section to play something, I try to build that culture up. First, we're going to clap for them. All right, nice job. And then we're going to say, Also, you know what could be better? And I encourage them to do that for themselves and for other groups. We're always going to give good feedback, but we're going to do it with the spirit of improving each other. And so they're all responsible for their own playing. And they're also a little bit responsible for everybody else's playing too, because I always talk about, hey, if the person in your section next to you is playing F sharp and you know it's an F natural, like call them, be like, hey, FYI, and you don't have to be mean about it. You just have to say, that's a F sharp, mark it in or whatever. So I think that it's that culture of honesty for me of being like, hey, we're all trying to get better here. I'm going to help you. You're going to help me. And we'll all roast each other when we need it, because everybody needs it now and then.
I
Sarah,
love that.
Further thoughts on that?
Yeah. I mean, I know for myself, when I go to a PD or watch a webinar or something, I'm always like, okay, what can I take away right now? Like, what are the things that I can leave and implement right away? And I feel like we're kind of digging in on this idea of how do we give students autonomy to be leaders and to be stakeholders in what we're doing. And I bet you that we could come up with a lot of really quick examples of that. And I'm certain that people that are, on with us right now that are listening are doing a ton of these things. And I wish we could hear from everybody about their suggestions. But so I'm thinking about that. In my program, one of the things that I think helps us make sure that there's a place for everybody is that we do have a variety of ensembles. And I'm really fortunate to be able to do that. But 3 of the 9 groups in my program are student led. And they're kind of a collegiate a cappella style situation. And I'm super proud of the students for that. As a young teacher, it was easy to kind of get defensive about that because, you want to be needed. But over my time, I've been in my district for 15 years. I am so proud of that. I'll tell anyone that can listen that the students are doing this work. And so there are other things like that too that maybe I can talk about in a minute, but I'm kind of reflecting on the idea that sometimes as teachers, we think we have to create these kind of artificial parameters that will allow community to develop or allow social emotional learning to happen or, any of these kind of things that we're talking a lot about in education. But if we model and create situations that allow kids to take the lead, for example, like what you're talking about, Tanya, sometimes the byproducts are a lot more organic and more natural and feel more real. And then also kids can take those experiences, recognize that they liked it, and then look for other places in their life where either they can develop them or seek them out, right? So, to go back to that student leadership piece, I think there's a lot of ways we can give kids choice in the classroom. Like immediately we think of, okay, let's let kids pick a song on the concert, and sometimes that's the right thing to do. And sometimes that's a Pandora's box. I just finished up, I'm not like really a sports person, but some of my kids are. So we just did like a March Madness Sweet 16 bracket, and every kid in the ensemble suggested a song based on some research that they thought would be a great fit for our ensemble. And we used the bracket just like basketball and, narrowed it down. And we were having super spirited discussions about why one piece might be better for the group than another. But the kids are so invested in that learning and they're excited. And we have a student conductor that's going to do it. I bet you that in everybody's classroom, you can find situations like that. And then I think it's okay to name it, right? Like it's okay to be honest with kids and say, like, we're doing this together and we are going to decide on this song together because this is your ensemble. And sometimes I think even just the confidence to look at your own teaching or what's happening in your classroom and say, wait a minute, I am doing this great stuff. When I'm forced to be on the spot and what community building activity are you doing? Sometimes we just have to name that. And I bet you everybody on the webinar today could take a minute to reflect and say, well, wait a minute. Yes, I am doing that. So now let's just name it and let's be proud of it. I don't know. What do you think about that?
I think it's great to name it. And I also think it's great to tell them when they have done a good job, not just at doing the music, but doing the teamwork too. Mm-hmm. When they have worked together on whatever, maybe it's a small ensemble, maybe it's just the fact that somebody helped somebody else find something. I think it's great to recognize that and say, hey, I noticed that you did this. I want to thank you for that. That really helps us build community. Like, I think it's good for kids to register when they're building that community, because sometimes they don't. Sometimes they're not internalizing the lessons that we talk about with social emotional learning and with building that community. They're not thinking of it in terms of what they can do on the daily. And when they are given that feedback immediately and said, oh, hey, I really like that you did this. That helps us, be more together. That helps us with our general community. I think it's good for them to know that in the spirit of naming it.
Well, and it doesn't have to be something huge, right? It can be as simple as, let's try this phrase crescendoing to the end, and let's try this phrase decrescendoing to the end. All right, which do we want to do? Let's take a vote. Done.
Yep.
Right? It can be small or large.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think just to add on little tidbits, I'm sure take what you will from it. But I really think that, Jill, especially what you were saying about the honest but kind, it's this idea of safety, right? To me, some kids, some of my kids come to school not feeling safe from their home, that's just the reality of what is happening in the US right now. So to me, I want to make sure that then when they step into school, I am by that door saying welcome, you belong here, hug them, shake their hand, welcome them into the space. And I think one of the challenges, and I feel like sometimes we get into this, rosy kind of feel because it's a community and it's beautiful, but here are the challenges I'm facing. Ready? Here we go. Sometimes it's hard for kids to open up, right? I think that is super essential to recognize that for some kids, it is not easy to be I am a leader and I am amazing. And they, so I'm thinking about the kids right in the middle and henceforth to kind of how do I shape this experience? So Jill, going back to your question again, about even first day, what do you do? One of the things I do is I recognize that, first of all, my name is ridiculously long. My name is really, really hard, but I make it a huge deal that part of your identity is your name. How do you pronounce your name? Some of these kids will let me just call them by the wrong name for the whole year. And at the end, some other kids oh, she goes by Kiki. What are you talking about? So it's really important to figure out their name. So first class, I'll be can everybody share about something about your name? It could be the history of it, who named you, how did you get this name, and what it means, anything you want to share about your name. Then we have a game that kind of they have to say an alliteration, I would be Tenacious Tanya, the alliteration from the name, and then the person next to them have to say their name, and then it changes into a whole thing. So I do a lot with names. I also like words of affirmation. I'll have everybody get a single beautiful sheet of paper with their name in the middle, and they go around around robin, and they have to write nice things about each other. And it could be something as simple. I think one of the challenges that I face in terms of building community is also oh my gosh, we have to get through all this rep and I have to do all of this. How do I inject this in? Well, something as simple as a roll call, if anybody absent, instead of saying present, I'll have this is the question of the day. What if you could have a superpower, what would you want it to be? And I'll say their name and they'll be flying, or things like that. Or what's your favorite utensil? So in those ways, in those little finite spaces, they tend to get silly. And I think that's when they really blossom. So, I think part of the difficult conversation too is how do you get started? And I think the answer might be that it doesn't have to be a huge, massive thing that you overturn every single thing you're doing. Start somewhere where you're comfortable and then go from there.
Love that. Thanks, Tanya. By the way, mine is immediate transportation. I want to like snap my fingers and be somewhere else. Since we're a little over halfway through here, I do want to stop quick and do another giveaway. So I'm going to bring that up. We have another $100 Sheet Music Plus gift card. So I'm going to spin. Hopefully no other spouses of panelists are here today to steal all our prizes. Looks like Tara Drummond, congratulations. Watch your email after the session here so we can get you your gift card. That'll be coming within a week or so. All right. So to move on a little bit, I know in our conversations together this week in prep for this, we were talking a little bit about building community in the academic sense versus in the social sense in our rooms. And I thought that was such an interesting question. When I think about building academic community, I think about how we're so lucky as music teachers to be able, we have flexibility that maybe other subject levels don't have. They have a very set curriculum, but we have a lot of flexibility in what we program and what we work on from the day to day, because we're able to choose literature to suit our students' needs. And that includes not only their playing needs and their actual technical demand needs, but also their needs and sense of belonging in their culture. And so I think something that I was always interested to do in the classroom is to be not only like culturally aware and try and program things that, you know, if I have a large population of students that have music that's different from what ends up in your typical Western curriculum, in whether it's the method book or the literature, we would try to do that, but also just their interests. Like if I have a bunch of art nerds in one group, you know how every group is a little bit different. They always come in with a little bit of different DNA. You know, we try to do a unit where we connect to art. Or one year, I had a class of beginners that was like so boy heavy, and they were all just sports nuts. Like all they thought about was baseball. And, you know, like, so we supplemented and we learned like the ESPN theme. Was it for a concert? No, but we could use it for a warm up. And then that is what kind of gets their interest level going. And builds their excitement a little bit to come in and do something that's with their pals. Like maybe it's not playing baseball, but it's baseball adjacent. So I would love to hear what you guys have to say on academic community building.
Well, I'll start. Is that okay? Yeah. So I love that example because I can imagine a scenario where those kiddos are like at home watching baseball and they're like, wait, hang on, I can play that, right? Because what are we trying to do at the core? Like create people that want to go out into the world and make music together. That's phenomenal, right? So I guess for me, coming from an ensemble that has text, I think we have a lot of opportunities as singers to do that kind of work through discussion. And you know, I'll speak from that piece. I believe really strongly that listening to great music builds great musicianship. So we do a listening activity in my class every day. And at first, that was something that I kind of approached from the lens of trying to build musicianship through listening to great music, like I said. And that definitely, I believe in that strongly, it happens. But something that I didn't really anticipate from that experience was the community aspect that was going to be built. So this is in my classroom. We start each day with a listening. I have the info on what we're going to listen to on our projector. The kids come in, they have like a listening journal. They jot down the info. We listen to or watch something, not only choral music, but something. And then they jot notes about it. Then they chat for 30 seconds with their neighbor. And then we have a brief discussion as a class. And what I've discovered over the past couple of years doing this on a daily basis, through those discussions, kids are finding commonalities. We'll find that, okay, everybody thought of the color green when they listened to this song, or this song reminded everybody of a Disney movie they hadn't thought about, or whatever. And so through those discussions, I think I've watched my kids build empathy for each other. I've watched them notice commonalities with people that maybe they don't know. I've watched them build connections and then outside of class talk to somebody and say like, "Oh, you said you liked this. I noticed this, or you might like this." So that was kind of a byproduct that I didn't anticipate at first, but has been amazing. And there might be opportunities to do that, on a smaller scale in anybody's classroom. Does this music remind you of something? And then kids start to see connections with each other. That could be a 30-second kind of thing. I think the other academic piece that I would throw out is anytime we engage kids in peer reflection or self reflection, there are opportunities to build connections with each other. If we're having kids, and I think you guys both alluded to this before, if kids are involved in the decision making and figuring out what to do next and what we want to keep working on, that's going to build connections immediately and organically too. So, Tanya, what about you?
Oh, wow. I'm like imagining how it would fit into my class as you're talking about it. It's like, oh, I'm learning too. I love it. I think for me, like over the past couple of years, especially coming out of COVID, right? We still have to acknowledge that COVID did happen, and we're still, trying to adjust how our children have changed, right? Um, I feel like some of them are just not quite the same kids I saw before all of that happened. Um, so I pay a lot of attention on this idea of like, how do I listen to my students? How do I approach my relationship with them so that it does help them academically as well? And for me, like it really comes through in this idea, like you're right, like we have a lot of options and choices in what we choose to do. So like for example, I know that one of my students is really a wonderful dancer. And I was overhearing another student was like, she was humming La La Land. And I was like, oh, La La Land's so nice. The music's so great. And whoa, another student can dance. Let's see what we can do with that. So I actually programmed something from the pop selections, La La Land, and they did it. And I have like that student like make her own choreography like in front of while we play. And I think like just being able to be flexible in terms of what that looks like. I think some of us still, I mean, I do have that heartache of like, before COVID, it was this, right? But being able to kind of like flourish, the talents of what the kids are and what they are interested in has been so essential. And it really makes me a happier teacher. I think that's also key is that in the midst of all of this, part of our work, in building community really has to come from within us, right? And how it feels right for us. So I kind of, just as a thought, just being mindful on what that mirror looks like, like putting it up to yourself, putting it up to the kids, and how does that conversation happen, so that we can achieve something really, really wonderful together. So, I'm still working on it, I will say, every single day, but that's been a challenge that I feel really excited, to work on. But Jill, I would love to hear your ideas as well.
Yeah, when you're talking about listening to your students, I was like, I heard a teacher that I was like on a staff with at a school talk about, I was talking about getting kids input on something, and he said, well, the kids don't know anything. They have to be told what's right. And like in that moment, like I was radicalized because my thoughts on it'd be nice to get the kids' opinions on this, it went from that to no, kids' opinions are necessary, and I need to be listening to exactly what they tell me. And I don't always have to make every single decision based on what they think, but I need to be constantly thinking about it because, they know what they're interested in. They know what their needs are, even if they don't have the vocabulary to verbalize it. And I think it's so important that we listen to exactly what they say. If you guys missed it, there's a question in the Q&A here. Kim asked if we'd be willing to share the listening journal. So Sarah, if you can, we'll definitely be sending out a follow-up email, probably with some of our highlights of the talk. And then, hopefully Sarah will include
Absolutely. Kim, I'll share my email, and I'd love to talk to you more about it. I'm so passionate about that.
Love that.
Before we leave this, could we just go back kind of to tie the two things that you said together? Tanya, I think your point about coming out of COVID is so real and wise, and it's easy to forget, kind of. And Jill, your point about the student voice, kind of putting those together. I really love having student teachers in my classroom, and something that we've been talking about with some student teachers this year is just remembering that if a child doesn't come into our classroom with a skill already developed, that's kind of what we're there for, right? And sometimes it's easy to get stuck, but there are some social skills that can be built through some of the experiences that we're talking about that are applicable in other places. And I think we can all, as educators, recognize that, kids aren't having the same kind of conversations that they were having pre-COVID, or, just the skill of how do you start a conversation with somebody that isn't your best friend? Like, those are things that I think a lot of kids are struggling with, and the connections for each other. So, some of the examples that you gave, Tanya, asking every kid to answer the same question, we're modeling some behaviors that then they can take outside of our classroom. So to go back to what we were talking about before, applicable skills, they're musical, yes, but they're also kind of making our world better and letting kids feel connected to each other. And I don't know, if kids can't do it yet, that's what we're there for. That's our challenge, and that's our gift, right? So just before we leave it.
Yeah, no, that actually leads us perfectly into maybe probably our last topic here, which is our social kind of activities that we do, or our social policies that we set in place to help kids build that community. And I think it's equally important as the academic stuff. And what I'm thinking of here is all of that kind of social emotional learning and teaching the kids how to interact with each other and how to interact with me as a teacher, because especially post-COVID, they do not always come in knowing that, and has to be explicitly taught. And so, I talked earlier about making sure that they know I'm going to admit my mistakes. That's also social, but something that was magical for me is one year I was lucky to have a time when all teachers could pull students in for remedial work. And you would see the same students for like 40 minutes or 30 minutes or something every day for a week. And then the next week you get a new student. And I thought about how I was going to use that in my classroom. And I realized it would be a great time for sectionals, because at the school I was working at, I didn't have time for sectionals. I could pull out like 1 to 3 student lessons, and then my large rehearsal, but I could never rehearse entire sections together. And something clicked with the kids when they were in their sectionals. I would end up seeing each group maybe 3 to 4 times a year, for a week at a time, but they would start to develop just in 30 minutes a day, their own little like traditions and in jokes and little family nerdy things that they had. They didn't have time to build it in rehearsal, because it's we gotta go. And I'm like squashing little revolutions here and there. But in the sectional, you can be looser and you can start to develop those intersection relationships where they start to build an identity as a mini group within your ensemble. So it became, we're the low brass and you can't come to our Thanksgiving dinner. And like, just like things that are, they all belong to the big crowd, but everybody loves like a harmless click of, we're, the clarinets are doing this one thing and we always do this. And they all have their little identity. They all have their brand. And it really solidified kids' relationships with, they maybe are friends with the person they sit next to because they have to share a stand, but maybe not with the kid that's 4 seats down from them. But once they start to have that time as a smaller group, it really started to become a weird, magical thing that happened. And I think, in our lives, we all have, we have our nuclear family that we see all the time. Then we have our close circle of friends, and then we have our coworkers and our acquaintances, and we're all contributing differently to all these groups. And I think it started to build their sense of like, yes, I'm a band member, but I'm also a trumpet player, and that's like a different thing than a percussionist. And it was just really cool to see. And so I'm excited to hear what you guys have to say about like socialization and just getting to know your kids in that social realm. Tanya, you want to kick us off this time?
Sure. Okay. I was going to hand it off to Sarah, but okay. So, Jill, this is really fascinating because, the first thing you said, like when we started, was this idea that your friends are like a lot of them are musical friends. It is such like an ensemble magic that we are creating something, and especially music together. And it's something that I think lives with us for a really, really long time, profoundly. And what I think a lot about is this idea of pride, like what you're saying about like this little the friend group and things like that. There was a moment in which like a couple months ago where a student who I thought was not into the viola, I really thought she was not into viola, but she emailed me and her little like picture was like a viola, and I was like, are you serious? Like, you're into this? And that really surprised me, right? But it made me think deeply about how like me as a teacher kind of measure and gauge that, and how wildly inaccurate I was, right? So there's also this kind of aspect of like the assumptions are really, really important, and we just have to like check ourselves once in a while. And so it leads me to this next point, is that part of like the idea of building community, I think like we when I first started thinking about it, it was really like this idea of vision and everyone coming together for this vision and the hard work and things like that. But as we're talking more about it and like thinking back to Jill, what you say about like your relationship, is we are the bridge, we are the catalyst for a lot of these relationships that can be forged that are lifelong, right? So, while we are doing the good work, how do we create spaces so that it feels right to make that to forge these relationships? So for me, I think deeply about the power of language. I think language is so key, especially in how kids feel as they're learning something so vulnerable. Like for example, for string especially, I often see these like really, really shy folks that will use like this much bow, right? Because it feels difficult to like really expand your body and open up. So instead of saying like more bow, like, which is we hear that so often from string orchestra teachers, I say like, can you just claim your space? Can you expand, and fill in the air and the sound? Can you contribute, like your voice to this, right? And I think that kind of thing like has such, it's social, but it is social like uplift, right? It is an uplifting thing that we are in as teachers are in the position of power to do. And I think it comes from such a place of vulnerability, especially when talking about like Sarah, thinking about voice, right? Like when you say like you're out of tune, like to a kid, like it's their voice, that's their body, and it feels fascinating to think about. And I think like just that idea can really, really be profound, for, across the board, every single age. So Sarah, I would love to hear more about like the choral world and,
Yeah, well, I mean, I think to go back to the question about what non-academic things do we do, there's a couple things that really have made a huge difference in my space. Um, this is going to sound like I'm joking, but apparel is a huge thing that matters. Like, I don't know about your kids, but if they have a hoodie that everybody has or a t-shirt, I know there's a question in the chat about elementary chorus, and I want to get back to that specifically, but like kids want to feel like they belong. So, we've had years where everybody makes like a friendship bracelet with different colors that mean something different. Um, just like a physical symbol that I belong goes so far. So that's the non-academic thing that I think about a lot. The other thing for me is our physical space. And, Tanya, you talked about welcoming kids into your space. I'll give you an example. In my building, not every child has a locker. So we live in a place where winter is very snowy and kids wear jackets, but not every kid has a place to put it. And so I bought some coat racks at the Christmas tree shop. Like, sorry, it went away. And I put them up in my classroom. And now kids, like, they come in to drop off their coat. They come to pick it up. They feel like they have a place that's home, like that they belong. And that's just one example. But I bet you that there are things like that in other people's buildings. And as I boil it down, I'm thinking about how could you look for those opportunities in your own space. And I think it's just looking for like what part of the kid's life isn't being served right now. So for my students, another one that's been big for us is I have a tea station, like a electric kettle with tea. And because we live in Rochester, New York, and it's like cloudy 364 days out of the year here, right? And so I noticed that kids were sad. I don't know. So we made a thing of it. Like, let's have tea. If you want tea, come on in. And it's become this like self-serving thing. And does everybody need a tea station? No, but it's something that the kids felt like was theirs and is special, and not every kid in the school can go get tea and that kind of thing. So I think it's serving all needs of the students. If you can see an area that's a gap, helps them feel like they're seen and they're connected. But I also think finding ways to serve all students. And I noticed there's a question in the chat about how do you build these connections with kids that aren't so willing, right? And I think my answer to that would be I heard somebody once say the way to every kid's heart was to find the child that's the hardest to love and then love them publicly. And that is really hard as a teacher, like way easier said than done. But I can think about some kids who, were assigned to my ensembles not by choice and really did not want to be there, but they loved taking attendance for me. And it gave them something to do for the first 7 or 8 minutes of class. And they felt purpose. And did they ever sing to the level that some of their peers did? No. But I think if I were to ask that child, I think that they would be able to say that they felt like they belonged there, even if they weren't singing. And that probably seems like a rose-colored glasses answer, but those kiddos that are, like the person in the chat, Donna, mentioned, like negative or disrespectful, it's not a solution for everything, but I think every kid wants to be connected and to be loved on. So
yeah, and some kids really need a non-musical way to contribute because they don't feel confident in their musical skills yet. And so I have had those kids, take attendance or come in and fix the music stands. Like, you're good with a wrench, like let them do that. It doesn't matter. Like if you come to them and say, hey, I've noticed that you are really good at blank. I need your help with blank. 9 times out of 10, help out with things. In this question on games, this is a band thing, but it could be made into an elementary course thing, I think. I used to do an improv game with my elementary kids, beginners in band, and they would come in and we would have a call and response game. So we'd pick a note and you could have them sing it. I had them play it on instruments. It was a concert B flat, but I'd give them a metronome, 1, 2, 3, 4, and then I play a rhythm and they just have to repeat it back to me immediately. I play bum, 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 bum. They go bum, 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 bum. And we do it as a response for a few days to get them used to it. And then they are allowed to make the rhythm and everyone else has to repeat it. And it's a good way to get them all like singing or playing one-on-one. They would do, their own thing, but everyone was like excited to hear what everyone else was going to play or something. And it was always a really fun game. Kids loved it. Maybe Sarah, you have something else as an actual choir director, but that was a fun game for my kids.
Yeah, well, so I teach mostly the upper levels now, but my daughter is in 4th grade chorus, and she has a phenomenal chorus teacher. And I guess 2 things that I would highlight from my daughter's experience, and I think this teacher might say this too, any activity that allows kids to have voice in creating something. So similar to what you're saying, Jill, like could a child model if you're going to do sirens, for example, could kids be the leaders of things like that? It's not really a game, but an experience that kind of brings the kids into the fold. And then the other thing that I'll shout out my colleague for, she ends every rehearsal she's like one of those big, thick joke books of like corny, silly jokes. And she ends with a joke and she always tries to find like the worst one. And it's become a ritual with her kids. And they look forward to it and they all like collectively groan and she pretends like she's offended and it's like a thing. And I wonder, I give her a lot of credit for that because, to be the grown up and kind of put yourself out there that way can be hard. But her kids feel connected to each other because they know that they get to like look at their neighbor and be like, oh, that joke's so corny or whatever. And I don't know, it's silly, but I'd like to think more on that and maybe we can share some other ideas. But those rituals that we share, I think can help with the mood and the ideas. Yeah.
Awesome. Well, I know we're coming up on time and I want to make sure people, if they are signed up for the next webinar, they can get to that. But thank you so much for joining me for this. I loved having this conversation with you. If you're keeping an eye on your email, we're going to do one more quick giveaway. And this is for one more $100 Sheet Music Plus gift card plus a Blue Yeti microphone from Hal Leonard. And that person, they'll be contacting you via email for your address so that they can ship that. And so our third and final winner for today is Bethany Higgins. Congratulations. You'll be receiving a $100 gift card for Sheet Music Plus and a Blue Yeti microphone from Hal Leonard. So thank you so much for all of you for being here. Keep an eye on your email. We'll send a follow-up and any final thoughts that we have, any resources you asked for. And we hope you enjoyed this conversation listening as much as we enjoyed having it. So thanks, Tanya and Sarah. It was lovely to chat with you all.
Thank you.
Thank you.